rain came down hard, washing away the chalk letters that Skolola had written on the pavement. Her lessons, her dreams, her name. Somewhere above the thunder, a woman laughed to herself, a wild, broken sound. "The angels are coming, my daughter," her mother murmured, clutching a tattered blanket. "They said they'll bring light." But the only light that came was the flare of passing headlights, blinding and gone too quickly. Skolola crouched under the bridge, arms wrapped around her knees, trying to protect her notebook from the rain. The pages were already damp and curling, but she kept writing. Numbers, English words, phrases she'd overheard from passing schoolchildren. It didn't matter that she was hungry. It didn't matter that her feet were bare and bleeding. What mattered was remembering. If she forgot the words, she would lose herself too. Lagos at dawn was cruel to the poor. The city moved fast, trampling anyone who couldn't keep up. Vendors pushed carts through puddles, danfos honked, and people shouted over the sound of generators. The world was loud and indifferent. Skolola and her mother, Abini, had made a home beneath the bridge on Mile 12. It wasn't really a home, just a space between concrete and shadow where rainwater dripped in lazy intervals. Her mother's mind came and went like the tides, but Skolola loved her fiercely. Some days Abini was lucid enough to hum lullabies from the village. On others, she spoke to invisible friends or warned Skolola not to look at the eyes in the water. That morning, Skolola shook her gently. "Mama, wake up! It's morning!" Abini stirred, smiling faintly. "You're early for school." Skolola swallowed hard. "Yes, Mama." She lied often now. It was easier than explaining that she hadn't been to a real school in 2 years. She packed her worn-out pencil and a scrap of chalk into her plastic bag. "I'll be back soon." "Bring me sunrise bread," Abini said dreamily. "I will." Sholola's destination wasn't a bakery or a market. It was a tall iron fence that surrounded a private school, Queen's Crest International Academy. Every morning she waited outside, listening through the bars as teachers shouted instructions and children recited in unison. Today's lesson drifted out clearly. 2 + 2 = 4, Sholola whispered, grinning. She repeated every line, her voice barely audible over the noise of the street. She pressed a broken piece of chalk against the sidewalk and copied the arithmetic. When her chalk snapped, she used her finger. "Oi, you!" a guard barked suddenly. "What are you doing there?" Sholola jumped up. "Nothing, sir. I was just—" "Go away. This is not your place." She ran before he could grab her, her bag thumping against her back. She didn't stop until she reached the corner of the market, panting and trembling. The vendors stared. They all knew her, the barefoot girl with the notebooks. Some pitied her, others dismissed her as mad. But one woman, Auntie Linda, shook her head and waved her over. "Come, small one," she said. "You've been out since dawn again?" Skolola nodded, eyes down. Auntie Linda slid a plate of rice toward her. "Eat before you faint. You read too much for a girl with an empty stomach." "I'm learning, Ma," Sholola said softly, "so I can help my mama." The woman smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. "You've got a good brain, better than half those rich children." Skolola's face brightened. "You think so?" "I know so." It was Auntie Linda who first gave her hope. She paid Skolola to sweep her stall, and after a few weeks bought her a second-hand uniform. "Go to that public school down the road," she said. "You'll thank me later." For a while it worked. Skolola sat at a real desk again, learned proper handwriting, even made a friend or two. She was poor, but she was visible. Then one day, Auntie Linda didn't open her stall. Word spread quickly. Her immigration papers had finally come through. She'd gone abroad. 2 weeks later, Skolola was sent home for unpaid fees. Home meant under the bridge again. The hunger came back first, sharp and familiar. Then the silence, the kind that eats at your spirit. Abini's mind had drifted further by then. She spent her days muttering prayers to shadows. Sholola stopped asking when she'd get better. At night, the girl watched the city lights flicker across the water. She whispered her lessons under her breath so she wouldn't forget. A for apple, B for book, C for Christ, her mother interrupted suddenly, her eyes glinting in the dark. The angels said they'd bring light. Skolola smiled weakly. Maybe they will. She didn't know that the angels her mother spoke of were closer than she thought. that beyond the tall iron fence and the shining cars, someone was about to see her, not as a shadow but as a spark. That someone would be Jessica Agu. And the moment their worlds touched, neither the street girl nor the billionaire's daughter would ever be the same again. The first time Jessica saw the girl by the fence, she thought she was imagining it. It was a Thursday afternoon, humid, with the sun smothered by lazy clouds. Jessica had stayed behind in the school garden after class, sulking over another failed math test. Her father's driver was late, and she didn't want to wait near the other kids who always whispered about her, billionaire's daughter, spoiled brat, brainless beauty. Then she saw movement beyond the mango tree, a figure crouched by the outer wall, writing something in the dust. The girl's uniform wasn't one of theirs. It was faded, torn, probably borrowed. Her hair was tied back with a fraying ribbon, and her fingers were white with chalk dust. Every few seconds she looked up toward the classroom windows as if listening, then scribbled furiously again. Jessica frowned. What is she doing? She crept closer, the sound of her patent shoes crunching the gravel. When she peered around the tree, the girl startled, dropping her chalk. Hey, Jessica said cautiously. What are you doing here? The girl's eyes widened, sharp, intelligent eyes that didn't match her ragged appearance. Nothing, she said quickly, stepping back. I was just passing. Jessica glanced down at the ground. There were math problems drawn neatly in the dirt, fractions, equations, and long division. Each answer was correct. That's, from our lesson, Jessica murmured. The girl's face tightened. I was only watching. Please don't tell the guard. Jessica hesitated. You were learning through the fence? The girl nodded once, shame flickering in her gaze. I listen when I can. They throw away chalk sometimes, so I use it. Jessica blinked. You like math? The girl smiled faintly. It listens when people don't. For a long moment, neither spoke. The air between them felt fragile, like a secret being born. Then Jessica said, You got all those answers right. I didn't even understand the question. The girl tilted her head. I can teach you. You? Jessica laughed, not out of cruelty but disbelief. You don't even go here. I used to, she said quietly, before they sent me away. Jessica's laughter faded. Why? My sponsor left. No money. Something twisted in Jessica's stomach. She didn't know what to say, so she said the first thing that came to mind. I hate this school. The girl looked at her as if she'd just confessed something impossible. Then why are you here? Because my dad says so. Silence again, the kind that happens when two worlds brush and realize they share the same ache. Finally, Jessica crouched down beside her. Teach me, she whispered. The girl blinked. Really? Yes, but we'll have to be quiet. If the guard finds you, he'll throw you out again. That was how their lessons began. Through the fence, under the mango tree, in the hush of afternoons that smelled of chalk dust and rain. Skolola came every day after that. She brought broken pencils, bottle caps for counting, and the confidence of someone who taught herself survival. Jessica, in turn, brought food, sandwiches wrapped in napkins, slices of fruit, even leftover birthday cake. Your handwriting's too scared, Sholola said one day, watching Jessica trace numbers in her notebook. Numbers don't bite, Jessica giggled. Tell that to my math teacher. You're afraid of being wrong. That's why you can't see the answer. Jessica rolled her eyes. You sound like a fortune cookie. Skolola smirked. Maybe, but I'm right. And she was. Under Skolola's patient teaching, Jessica began to understand patterns. How fractions danced into whole numbers. How algebra wasn't punishment but language. Her grades didn't skyrocket overnight, but something changed. She started raising her hand in class. Do you ever wish you could come here again? Jessica asked one afternoon, nibbling on an apple. Skolola hesitated. Every day. Maybe my dad could. No, the girl said sharply. Don't tell him about me. Jessica frowned. Why not? He helps everyone. Skolola's gaze darkened. Not people like me. Jessica didn't understand what she meant then, but she saw how the girl's shoulders tensed whenever she mentioned her father. Okay, she said softly. It'll be our secret. One afternoon, rain caught them off guard. Jessica ran toward the tree laughing, but Shalola didn't move. She stood in the downpour, face lifted, eyes closed, as if the rain itself were sacred. "You'll catch a cold," Jessica cried. Skalola shook her head. "It's the only time the sky feels close enough to touch." Jessica watched her, something blooming in her chest, a strange mix of admiration and sorrow. She realized that for all her wealth, she'd never felt as free as this barefoot girl under the storm. When they finally huddled together beneath the tree, dripping and shivering, Jessica asked quietly, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" "A teacher," Shalola said without hesitation, "so no child has to learn through offense." Jessica smiled. "Then you'll be the best teacher in the world." Skalola laughed softly. "And you'll be my first student." That night, as Jessica sat at dinner, her father noticed something unusual. "You're smiling," Chief Agu said, arching an eyebrow. "That's dangerous." Jessica grinned. "I learned something today." "From school?" "Sort of," she said. He chuckled. "Well, I'm proud of you. Maybe your teacher's finally reaching you?" Jessica's eyes flickered toward the window, where raindrops streaked the glass like chalk lines. If only you knew, she thought. She didn't know that soon he would. And when he did, everything, the bridge, the mansion, the mango tree, would collide in a way none of them could imagine. Jessica's grades were improving, but her curiosity was growing faster. She had always lived in a world of polished cars, private tutors, and marble floors. But now, for the first time, she wanted to know what existed beyond her father's gates. Skalola's world fascinated her, not just because it was different, but because it was real. And so, one humid afternoon, Jessica decided to follow her. When the final bell rang, Skalola packed her scraps of chalk into her bag and waved. "See you tomorrow," she said softly. Jessica smiled. "Wait, can I walk with you?" Skalola froze. "No, you shouldn't." "Why not?" "Because where I go, people like you don't belong." Jessica hesitated. "Then maybe they should." Before Skalola could stop her, Jessica trailed behind at a distance. Past the iron fence, past the mango tree, through dusty alleys where laughter was replaced by shouts and motorbike engines. Her pristine shoes turned brown within minutes, her perfume swallowed by the city's mix of exhaust and sweat. Skalola didn't notice her at first, until she turned onto the bridge and saw the small figure struggling to keep up. "Jessica," she hissed. "What are you doing here?" Jessica panted. "I wanted to see." "To see what?" "Where you live." Skalola stared at her in disbelief. "You shouldn't have come." But Jessica's gaze had already drifted beyond her, to the narrow strip of concrete under the bridge, where a beanie sat rocking back and forth, humming to invisible music. Her dress was torn, her hair matted, her hands shaking. The sight hit Jessica like a punch. "Is that—" "My mother," Skalola said quietly. Jessica swallowed hard. "Is she sick?" "In her mind," Skalola replied. "Some days she knows me, some days she doesn't." Jessica looked around. The scattered bottles, the thin blanket, the broken kettle lying nearby. She had never seen poverty this close before. It wasn't just lack of money. It was absence of safety, dignity, silence. "I'm sorry," Jessica whispered. Skalola's eyes flickered. "Don't be. You didn't make the rain." They sat together for a while, neither speaking. The traffic above them thundered like a heartbeat. A beanie began to hum again, her voice fragile but strangely beautiful. After a moment, Shalola said, "She used to teach me songs when I was little. She was a singer once. My father left when she got sick." Jessica didn't know how to respond. "Does anyone help you?" "No one remembers we're here," Skalola said, "except you." The words hung heavy between them. When Jessica returned home that evening, her father was already at the dinner table, phone in hand, talking in his usual commanding tone. "Sell the shares before the end of the quarter, not after." He hung up and looked at her. "You're late." "I was with a friend." Chief Agu raised an eyebrow. "From school?" Jessica hesitated. "Sort of." "Sort of?" He frowned. "Be careful who you call a friend. Not everyone belongs in your circle." The phrase stung. For the first time, Jessica realized how small her father's circle really was. High walls, tight rules. No room for anyone different. She pushed her food around her plate and said nothing. The next day, Jessica brought a loaf of bread and 2 bottles of water. When Shalola saw her approach the bridge, she scowled. "You came back." "I brought something," Jessica said, holding out the bag. "For you and your mom." Shalola shook her head. "We're not beggars." "I know," Jessica said softly. "It's not charity, it's friendship." Something in her tone disarmed Shalola. She hesitated, then took the bread. "Thank you." They ate together in silence, breaking pieces off the loaf and laughing when Abini tried to sing between bites. When the last crumbs were gone, Jessica said, "If my father knew where I was right now, he'd lose his mind." Shalola smirked. "Then don't tell him." "I won't," Jessica said. "Our secret?" "Our secret." They shook hands, their worlds colliding in that small gesture, a promise between gold and dust. Over the next few weeks, Jessica came often. She learned to duck when buses passed too close, to ignore the stares of vendors, to tie her scarf tighter when the wind carried the smell of burning waste. She brought books sometimes and Shalola devoured them, teaching herself faster than Jessica could keep up. But secrets have short lives. One afternoon, as they practiced multiplication under the mango tree, a shadow fell over them. "Jessica!" The voice was deep, sharp, unmistakable. Jessica froze. Slowly she turned. Chief Agu stood behind her, his white suit gleaming in the sun, his expression unreadable. His eyes shifted to Shalola, the barefoot girl clutching a worn notebook, defiant and afraid. "Who is this?" he asked. Jessica's mouth went dry. "My friend." "Your friend?" His gaze hardened. "From where?" "She teaches me," Jessica said quickly. "She's helping me learn." Chief Agu stared at the two girls for a long, silent moment. Then he said, "Get in the car." "But now." Jessica looked at Shalola helplessly. "I'll come back," she whispered. Shalola didn't answer. She just watched as the car door closed, swallowing her only student, the only friend she'd ever had. When the engine roared to life, the dust it kicked up stung her eyes. She told herself it was the wind, but it wasn't. The car ride home felt endless. Jessica sat in the back seat, her fingers twisted tightly in her lap. Her father hadn't spoken a word since they left the school. The silence between them was colder than the air conditioning blasting through the car. When they finally pulled into the driveway, Chief Agu stepped out first. "Inside, Mon," he said. Jessica followed, her heart pounding. In the living room, the air smelled faintly of lemon polish and authority. He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "Explain." Jessica swallowed hard. "She's my friend." "I gathered that much. What I don't understand," he said evenly, "is why my daughter was sitting under a tree with a homeless child. She's not—" He raised a hand. "Don't lie to me, Jessica. I saw her clothes, her feet, her hair. That girl lives on the streets." Jessica clenched her fists. "And she's smarter than anyone in my class." Chief Agu blinked, momentarily thrown. "What did you just say?" "She teaches me, Daddy. She knows math, English, everything. I'm passing because of her." He stared at her for a long time, his jaw tightening. "You've been sneaking out to see her?" Jessica hesitated. "Yes." His voice lowered, dangerously calm. "Do you have any idea what could have happened to you out there? Do you know the kind of people who live near that bridge?" "She's not like that," Jessica burst out. "She just wants to learn." Chief Agu turned away, pacing. His hand ran through his hair, the gesture of a man fighting an internal battle. "This conversation is over." "No, it's not," Jessica said stubbornly. "You can't just pretend she doesn't exist." He turned, eyes sharp as glass. "And you can't keep bringing strangers into your life as if kindness excuses danger." The words struck harder than he meant them to. Jessica's throat tightened. "She's not dangerous," she whispered. "She's just forgotten." For a fleeting moment, his face softened. Something flickered in his eyes, maybe guilt, maybe memory. Then it was gone. "Go to your room," he said quietly. Jessica didn't move. "If you won't help her, I will." His voice dropped to a whisper that was more frightening than a shout. "Jessica!" Her eyes filled with tears. "You always say money can fix anything? Why can't it fix this?" He stared at her, stunned into silence. And before he could find an answer, She ran upstairs. That night, sleep refused to come. Jessica sat by her window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Somewhere beyond those glowing towers was Shalola, probably huddled beneath the bridge, soaked by the rain that had begun to fall again. Her chest ached. She taught me how to believe in myself, she thought, and I left her there. She couldn't forgive herself for that. The rain grew heavier. The sound became a steady drumbeat, and with every drop, the decision formed more clearly in her mind. Jessica grabbed her raincoat. The bridge smelled of damp earth and smoke. Water streamed down the cracked pillars, forming tiny rivers that trickled into the dirt. Jessica's shoes slipped as she hurried beneath the overpass. "Skolola?" she called softly. There was no answer, only the distant rumble of traffic above. Then from the shadows, a small voice. "You shouldn't be here." Jessica turned. Skolola was sitting beside her mother, a thin blanket draped over their shoulders. Her eyes were tired but not surprised. "I had to see you," Jessica said, kneeling beside her. "I'm sorry I didn't stop him." Skolola shook her head. "It's okay. People like him don't see people like me." "That's not true," Jessica insisted. "He's just—" She hesitated. "He's scared. Of me." "No," Jessica said softly. "Of being wrong." Skolola smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You shouldn't get in trouble for me." "I don't care." Jessica reached into her bag and pulled out a folded blanket, some biscuits, and a small flashlight. "Here, take these." Skolola stared at the items, her lips trembling. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." Jessica placed them down beside her. "Because you'd do the same for me." For a while, neither spoke. They just listened to the rain. Then Shalola said quietly, "He's your father. He'll never let you come back here." Jessica looked her straight in the eyes. "Then I'll make him." The next morning, Chief Agu entered his office at the company headquarters and found an envelope on his desk. Inside was a note in his daughter's careful handwriting. "Daddy, please don't be angry. You always told me a good leader listens before judging. Shalola didn't ask for my help. I went to her. If you saw what I saw, you wouldn't turn away." Beneath the letter was a photograph. Jessica must have taken it the night before. It showed Skolola and her mother huddled under the bridge, the flashlight casting a small circle of light over them. For a long time, he didn't move. The image was raw, painfully human, and it stirred something he thought he'd buried long ago. Memories of his own childhood, of hunger, of a mother who'd sold bread on the roadside to keep him in school. He rose from his chair and looked out the window at the rain-soaked city. "Get the car," he told his driver. "We're going to mile 12. By the time he reached the bridge, the rain had stopped. The air was heavy and still. Skolola was there, crouched beside her mother, trying to light a small fire. When she saw him, her eyes went wide. "Sir?" He didn't speak for a long moment. Then he said, "You taught my daughter." "Yes, sir." "You risked your safety for it." "I just wanted to learn," she said quietly. He nodded slowly. "And you will." She frowned. "Sir?" He extended a hand. "Come with me." Shalola hesitated, staring at the outstretched palm, the same kind of hand that had always pushed her away. But this time, it wasn't pushing. It was offering. And though she didn't fully understand why, she took it. The smell of antiseptic hung in the air as Chief Agu stood at the foot of the hospital bed. Abini lay motionless, her frail hands resting on crisp white sheets. The doctor's voice droned somewhere in the background. Words like dehydration, psychosis, malnutrition, but they blurred into static. All he could see was the woman's hollow face, her cheekbones sharp from years of hunger. Beside him, Skolola sat rigid on a plastic chair, clutching the hem of her dress. She hadn't spoken since they arrived. Her eyes never left her mother. "She'll need time," the doctor said finally. "Stability, medication, but she's safe now." Chief Agu nodded absently. "Do whatever it takes." When the doctor left, silence filled the room, broken only by the soft beep of machines. Skolola's voice was barely a whisper. "Why are you doing this?" He turned to her. "Because someone should have done it a long time ago." Her brow furrowed. "People like you don't stop for people like us." He paused, studying her. "I used to be you." She blinked. "What?" "I was raised by a single mother in Enugu. She sold a car on the roadside so I could go to school. When she died, I swore I'd build a life where no one could ever look down on me again." Scolola's voice trembled. "So you understand?" "Yes," he said quietly. "That's why I couldn't walk away." For the first time since they met, she looked at him not with suspicion, but something like respect. The ride to his mansion was surreal. Scolola pressed her face to the car window as they drove past gleaming towers, manicured lawns, and fountains shaped like angels. She had never imagined places like this existed in the same city as her bridge. When the car stopped, she hesitated at the gate. "Are you sure I can come in?" Chief Agu smiled faintly. "You're already here." The guard stepped aside as they entered. The marble foyer reflected light in every direction. Crystal chandeliers glittered above her head. It felt like walking inside a dream she didn't belong to. Jessica came running down the stairs barefoot, her face alight with joy. "You found her." "Daddy brought me," Sholola said softly. Jessica threw her arms around her. "I knew he would." Chief Agu cleared his throat, masking a smile. "Let's not celebrate yet. She needs rest and food." The staff hurried to prepare a room, though Sholola tried to protest. "I can sleep anywhere," she said. "Not anymore," he replied. "You'll sleep in a bed, a real one." That night, Sholola sat on the edge of her new bed, staring at the softness beneath her fingers. The room smelled of jasmine and new beginnings. Jessica sat cross-legged across from her. "See? It's not so scary." "It's too clean," Sholola murmured. "I might ruin it." Jessica laughed. "Then ruin it with me. We'll call it living." They both giggled until the tension melted. "Thank you," Scolola said after a while. "For what?" "For seeing me." Jessica smiled. "You saw me first." Outside, rain began to fall again, gentler this time, like applause from the heavens. The next morning, Sholola woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains and the faint smell of buttered toast. She followed the sound of voices to the breakfast table, where Chief Agu sat reading the newspaper. Jessica waved her over. "Good morning." "Morning, sir," Sholola said, her voice hesitant. Chief Agu looked up. "Good morning, Scolola." "Sit." She obeyed carefully, unsure if she was allowed to touch the silverware. Jessica leaned in. "Eat. He won't bite." Chief Agu glanced at his daughter, amused. "Not unless she refuses breakfast." That made Sholola smile for the first time. As they ate, he asked gentle questions. What she liked to read, what subjects she enjoyed. When she told him she loved mathematics, he raised an eyebrow. "Numbers, Most children hate them." "They make sense," she said, "even when life doesn't." He nodded thoughtfully. "That's a better explanation than most economists I've met." Jessica snorted juice through her nose. Scolola laughed so hard she nearly dropped her spoon. For a few minutes, the house was filled with warmth instead of formality. After breakfast, Chief Agu called her into his study. Books lined the walls, their spines gleaming like soldiers. He handed her a small stack of papers. "These are your enrollment forms for Queen's Crest. You start next week." Her mouth fell open. "But I can't. I don't have—" "You don't need anything," he interrupted. "Uniforms, books, fees, it's all taken care of." Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. "Why are you being so kind?" He leaned back in his chair. "Because you reminded me what it means to fight for something worth learning." Sholola pressed the papers to her chest. "I'll make you proud, sir." He smiled faintly. "You already have." That evening, she visited the hospital again. Her mother was sitting up now, her eyes clearer. "Where have you been?" Abini asked softly. "Somewhere safe," Sholola said, kneeling beside her. "We're going to be okay now." Her mother's hand trembled as it found hers. "Did the angels come?" Scolola smiled through her tears. "Yes, Mama. They came." She didn't tell her the angel wore a white linen suit and spoke in quiet promises instead of miracles. Because sometimes heaven didn't send wings, it sent second chances. The uniform fit perfectly. Scolola stood in front of the mirror, fingers tracing the gold-stitched crest of Queen's Crest International Academy. The reflection staring back was unfamiliar. A girl in polished shoes and pressed fabric, not the one who once scribbled lessons into the dirt. Jessica bounced beside her, grinning. "You look amazing, like movie amazing." Skolola turned, smiling shyly. It doesn't even feel real. It is real, Jessica said, tugging her sleeve playfully. You're one of us now. But deep down, Shalola wasn't sure what one of us meant. The morning sun burned bright as their driver pulled up to the school gates. Students swarmed in, their laughter echoing through manicured lawns and white columns. Skolola's stomach twisted. She caught sight of her reflection in the car window again. Neat braids, new shoes, a borrowed confidence, and whispered a silent promise to herself. Don't waste this. Jessica squeezed her hand before stepping out. Ready? Skolola nodded. I think so. The guard waved them through without hesitation. The same gate that once shut her out now opened effortlessly. Her throat tightened. Inside, everything looked sharper. Marble floors, polished desks, the scent of paper and privilege. Conversations halted as they walked in together. Is that the scholarship girl? Someone whispered. I heard she used to live under a bridge. Jessica's head snapped toward the sound, eyes blazing. Say that again, she dared, voice steady as steel. The other student shrank back. Skolola touched her arm gently. It's okay. No, it's not. Yes, Skolola said, meeting her friend's eyes. It is. Let them talk. I'll answer with grades. Jessica blinked, then laughed softly. You're cooler than anyone here. Not cooler, Skolola said with a smile. Just hungrier. By midday, every teacher already knew her name. Skolola's answers were precise, her reasoning sharp. When Mrs. Omotayo, their math teacher, posed a complex problem on the board, the room went silent, except for Skolola's quiet voice explaining each step. The teacher stared, astonished. Excellent work, Miss Skolola. Truly exceptional. Jessica beamed with pride. Told you, she whispered. But Skolola barely heard her. She was lost in the thrill of understanding, the same rush she used to feel while solving problems in the dirt by the fence. Only now her chalk was clean, and the board belonged to her. When the bell rang, several students approached her, hesitant. You're really good at math, one said. Another added, Can you help me with algebra sometime? For the first time, the whispers weren't cruel. They were curious, respectful. It felt like sunlight. After school, the driver picked them up. Jessica couldn't stop talking about the day, how everyone looked at them, how proud she felt when Skolola answered the teacher's hardest question. But Skolola stared out the window, quiet. Chief Agu noticed when they got home. You're unusually silent, he said. It's just... She hesitated. It still doesn't feel like I belong. He nodded slowly. Belonging takes time, child. I didn't feel it for years, even after I made my first fortune. Skolola looked up. You didn't? He smiled faintly. When you grow up with nothing, you carry that nothing inside for a while. It doesn't disappear overnight, but one day you'll wake up and realize you've built something bigger than where you came from. His voice softened. You already have. Her eyes stung. She looked away before he could see the tears. That evening, she called the hospital. Hello, my little scholar, the nurse greeted. Your mother's resting now, but she's improving every day. Can you tell her I'll visit soon? Of course. When the line went quiet, Skolola whispered to the empty room. I'm learning for both of us, Mama. She hung up and returned to her desk. The study lamp glowed warm and steady, a small sun of her own. Jessica's laughter drifted down the hallway, mingling with the faint hum of the city beyond the mansion walls. For the first time in her life, the night didn't feel like an enemy. The following week, Queen's Crest announced an upcoming competition, the National Mathematics Challenge. The winner would receive a scholarship and national recognition. Mrs. Omotayo handed Skolola the form herself. I expect your name on this list. Skolola's heart raced. Me? Who else? The teacher said with a smile. You have a gift, my dear. Don't hide it. Jessica was thrilled. We're going to celebrate when you win. I haven't even entered yet, Skolola protested. Details, Jessica said with a grin. Winners don't ask permission. They just show up. Skolola laughed, shaking her head. You sound like your father. Jessica wrinkled her nose. Please don't say that. But later that night, when Skolola finally filled out the entry form, she realized Jessica was right. Winners show up. And this time she wasn't learning through a fence. She was walking through the front door, head high, heart steady, pencil sharp. The week of the competition arrived like a storm, sharp, loud, and impossible to ignore. Queen's Crest buzzed with excitement. Posters hung in the hallways, names printed neatly in bold letters. At the very top, under Representing Queen's Crest International Academy, was a name that made whispers trail behind it. Sholola Agu. For some it was admiration, for others confusion. To the children of Lagos's elite, she was still the mystery that didn't fit. A scholarship girl with eyes too serious and hands that used to tremble when someone mentioned the word bridge. But Skolola didn't hear the noise anymore. All she saw was the test ahead and the promise she had made to her mother. We'll be okay. The day before the event, Jessica barged into her room, holding 2 juice boxes like trophies. "Fuel for champions," she announced. Skolola laughed. "You act like you're the one writing the exam." "I am," Jessica said. "In spirit, I'll be there screaming the loudest." "I believe that." They sat on the floor together, surrounded by open notebooks. Jessica quizzed her on formulas and equations, often pausing halfway through to complain. "How do you even like this stuff?" Jessica groaned. "I swear these numbers were invented by people who hated happiness." Skolola smiled. "Numbers are fair. They don't care where you come from." Jessica looked at her, realizing that was more than just a line. It was a truth born from years of struggle. "Well," Jessica said softly, "tomorrow they're going to care who you are." The next morning, the school's bus carried the competitors to the National Education Center. Lagos shimmered under the sun, a mosaic of glass towers and rusted rooftops. Beauty and poverty stitched together like a single breath. Chief Agu stood at the school gates before they left, a quiet figure in a dark suit. "Remember," he said, "winning isn't about pride. It's about proving that brilliance can come from anywhere." Skolola nodded, holding his gaze. "Yes, sir." Jessica hugged her fiercely before she climbed aboard. "Don't forget, smile when they announce your name. You're representing both of us." "I'll try not to faint first." They laughed, but both felt the weight of what was coming. Inside the grand hall, hundreds of students filled the seats, each school wearing matching blazers, badges gleaming. Skolola's fingers tightened around her pencil. She wasn't used to microphones or spotlights or rooms this clean. "Contestants, you may begin." The timer buzzed. The first few questions were easy, almost comforting. Familiar equations, simple patterns. But the difficulty climbed fast, like a mountain testing her lungs. Sweat prickled her palms. Around her, pencils scratched feverishly. "Focus," she told herself. "You've done harder things than this. You survived the bridge." When the final bell rang, she set her pencil down slowly, breathing hard. The proctor collected the papers. "Results will be announced at noon." Noon felt a lifetime away. Back at the school, Jessica couldn't sit still. She paced the hallways, driving the teachers mad with her questions. "Have they called yet? Did anyone text?" "Miss Agu," said Mrs. Omatayo kindly, "patience is also a skill." Jessica groaned. "I'd rather learn algebra." When the call finally came through, the principal answered. His face broke into a rare grin. "Queen's Crest, first place." Jessica screamed so loudly that half the staff ran into the office. "She did it!" By the time Sholola returned to school, she was met with clapping, cheering, and a banner that read, "Congratulations, Sholora, our golden girl." The spelling was wrong, but the love was real. Jessica pushed through the crowd and threw her arms around her. "I told you, you're a legend now." Sholola laughed, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I just wanted to pass." "Well, you passed life." That evening, Chief Agu hosted a small dinner in her honor. The mansion glowed with golden light. Laughter filled the halls. For once, it wasn't just wealth, it was warmth. When he raised his glass for a toast, everyone quieted. "To Sholola," he said, "for proving that destiny bows to courage." The applause was thunder. Jessica whooped. Even the staff clapped from the doorway. Sholola's cheeks burned as she stood to reply. "Thank you, sir, and thank you, Jessica, for seeing me when no one else did." She turned toward the crowd, her voice trembling but clear. "If I've learned anything, it's that opportunity doesn't choose people. People choose what to do with it." Her words hung in the air, simple and powerful. Later that night, She found Chief Agu in the garden, standing beneath the same mango tree where she once taught Jessica her first fractions. "You should be proud," he said softly. "I am," she replied, "but I keep thinking, what about the others? The ones still behind the fence?" He looked at her, thoughtful. "You can't save everyone, child." "I know," she said, "but maybe I can reach someone. The way you reached me." Chief Agu smiled. "That's the kind of thinking that builds legacies." He paused, then added quietly, "You've changed this family, Skolola. You gave it a soul." Her throat tightened. "And you gave me a chance." He reached out, resting a hand on her shoulder. "This is only the beginning." As the wind rustled the leaves, she glanced toward the city lights in the distance. Somewhere out there, a little girl might be pressing her ear to a classroom window, listening for hope. And someday, Shalola promised herself, she would make sure that girl didn't have to listen through a fence again. The metal was heavier than it looked. Shalola kept it in her palm, tracing its smooth edges as sunlight poured through the mansion windows. The gold glimmered, catching the light like it belonged to another world. A world that, for the first time, had opened its doors to her. "You should hang it on the wall," Jessica said, plopping down beside her on the couch. "Someplace everyone can see it." Skolola shook her head. "It doesn't belong on a wall. It belongs in my mother's hands." Jessica smiled softly. "Then we'll take it to her." The hospital ward smelled of disinfectant and slow recovery. Abini sat up in bed, a bright scarf wrapped around her head. Her eyes, clearer now, lit up when she saw them. "My girls!" she exclaimed. "Two suns in one sky." Shkolola rushed forward, hugging her tightly. "Mama, look!" She placed the medal in her mother's palm. Abini turned it over, her lips trembling. "Is this gold?" "Yes, Mama, real gold. I won the competition." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "You see? The angels didn't forget us." Jessica laughed softly. "You were right, ma'am. She really is one of them." Abini reached for Jessica's hand. "And you, my daughter, are the reason she shines." Jessica blushed, unused to being called daughter by anyone but her own father. "She didn't need me, ma'am. She already had the light." Abini looked at both girls for a long moment, then whispered, "Then promise me you'll never let it go out." "We promise," Shalola said. Over the next few months, Shalola's world expanded. Newspapers wrote about her victory. Invitations came from schools and charities. Everyone wanted to meet the girl who had gone from the bridge to the top of the nation's rankings. But the fame didn't sit easily on her shoulders. At school, some students who once whispered now tried to befriend her. Teachers treated her like a symbol instead of a person. Even the headmistress introduced her at assemblies as our miracle student. Jessica noticed it first. "You're quieter lately," she said one afternoon as they walked home. Skolola shrugged. "Everyone sees the story. No one sees me." Jessica frowned. "You mean they don't see how hard it was?" "Exactly," she sighed. "They call it a miracle. But it wasn't magic. It was hunger and pain and trying not to drown." Jessica looked down. "Maybe they just don't know how to tell stories like yours." Shalola smiled sadly. "Then I'll teach them." A few weeks later, Chief Agu called her into his study. He was standing by the window, reading glasses perched on his nose, a letter in hand. "You've received an offer," he said. Skolola's heart raced. "From where?" "St. Elm's Preparatory Academy, in England. A full scholarship." Her breath caught. "England?" He nodded. "They saw your performance at the competition. They want you for their international scholars program." She felt dizzy. "I don't even have a passport." "You will," he said gently. "I'll handle everything." Skolola sank into the chair opposite him. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Jessica said from the doorway, grinning ear to ear. Skolola turned. "You knew?" Jessica nodded. "Daddy told me this morning. I've been dying to see your face." "But I can't just leave," Skolola said softly. "My mother's still here." "Your mother will be cared for," Chief Agu assured her, "and you'll be building something she dreamed of for you." Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't deserve all this." He smiled. "You earned it. Every moment you refused to give up earned it." That night, Shalola sat under the mango tree, the same one where she had once taught Jessica how to divide fractions with bottle caps. The air was thick with the scent of wet leaves and memory. Jessica joined her quietly, carrying 2 mugs of hot chocolate. "You're thinking too much," she said, handing one over. "I'm thinking about how far away it is," Shalola murmured, "and how close everything used to be." Jessica tilted her head. "You're scared." "Of forgetting," Shalola admitted. "Of becoming someone who doesn't remember the rain under the bridge." Jessica shook her head. "You won't. You carry it everywhere. That's what makes you who you are." Shalola smiled faintly. "Then promise me something. Anything. When I'm gone, if you ever see someone like me, someone struggling, invisible, you'll help them." Jessica grinned. "Of course. I'll tell them my best friend is changing the world." "You mean our world," Shalola corrected. "We're doing it together." The following week, the family gathered at the airport. The terminal gleamed with glass and chrome, a world away from the streets Shalola once called home. Abini clutched her daughter's hands, tears streaming freely. "Study hard, my angel. Don't be afraid of the sky." "I won't, Mama," Shalola whispered. "I'll send letters every week." Jessica hugged her so tightly that they both laughed through their tears. "Go win everything, okay? Just don't forget to come back." "I could never forget," Shalola said. Chief Agu placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're family now. Wherever you go, that doesn't change." When the boarding call echoed through the terminal, Shalola took a deep breath. "This isn't goodbye," she said. "It's just the next chapter." She turned toward the glass corridor, the medal still hanging around her neck. For a moment, her reflection appeared beside her old self, the barefoot girl with chalk on her hands, staring through the fence at a world she thought she could never reach. Then the image faded, and all that remained was the future. The first thing Shalola noticed about England was how the air smelled. Cold, sharp, and clean, like rain that had never touched dust. She stood outside the airport terminal, her breath rising in white clouds, the metal warm against her chest beneath her coat. A woman with a clipboard smiled and waved. "You must be Miss Shalola Agu," she said in a crisp accent. "Welcome to St. Elm's Preparatory Academy." The drive to the school was like watching a dream unfold through glass. Rolling fields stretched endlessly, dotted with cottages and stone fences. She had seen green before, but not this kind of green. It was the color of new beginnings. The school itself was older than any building she'd ever seen. Ivy climbed up gray stone walls, bells chimed softly in the tower, and students moved like a river of uniforms through the courtyard. When Shalola entered her new dorm room, she ran her hand across the desk. Smooth, polished wood. No cracks, no graffiti, no memories except the ones she was about to make. A note lay on the bed. "Welcome, scholar. May your mind be your compass and your courage your light." She smiled. The days passed quickly, but the nights stretched long. It wasn't the studying. She loved that part. It was the quiet, the kind that reminded her she was oceans away from everything familiar. Sometimes when she lay in bed, she could almost hear the rumble of cars over the bridge back home, her mother humming lullabies, Jessica's laughter echoing under the mango tree. One evening, she opened her laptop to find a video message waiting. Jessica's face appeared on the screen, blurry but bright. "Hey, genius! I'm here with Mama Abini. She says, hello. Also, I aced my English test. Can you believe that? You're rubbing off on me." Abini's voice floated faintly in the background. "My daughter, study well. The world is listening to you." Shalola smiled so hard her cheeks hurt. For a moment, the loneliness eased. At St. Elm's, she was known as the prodigy from Nigeria. Teachers adored her, students respected her, and yet she still felt like an echo in someone else's story. During one history class, a classmate named Emma leaned over. "So, is it true you lived under a bridge?" The room fell quiet. Shalola looked up slowly. "Yes," she said simply, "and I studied there too." Emma blinked. "That's insane." "It's called surviving," Shalola replied. Then she smiled. "You'd be surprised how much you can learn when you have nothing else." The teacher coughed awkwardly, but from that day forward, no one asked about it again. Instead, they began asking her for help, with math, with essays, with life advice she wasn't sure she was old enough to give. Somehow, the girl who once learned through a fence had become the one others leaned on. Months turned into a year. Spring came early, filling the campus with blossoms. Skolola had just finished an essay when her email chimed again. This time, it was from Chief Agu. Subject, an update. You'll want to hear your mother has been discharged from the hospital. She's doing well. Stronger every day. She's been helping Jessica tutor younger students at the foundation I started in your name. They call it the Light Initiative. Skolola gasped, reading it twice. The Light Initiative. She clicked the attached photo. Jessica standing beside a small building, painted yellow, with a hand-painted sign above the door that read, The Light Initiative, free lessons for every child. And there, beside her mother, were children sitting at desks made from old crates, pencils in hand, eyes bright with possibility. Tears blurred the screen. Her mother, the woman who once spoke to angels under the bridge, was now teaching again. Skolola whispered to herself, You did it, Mama. That summer, the school held its annual cultural night. Each student had to present something from their home country. Skolola chose a song. When she walked onto the stage, the lights dimmed. She sang an old Yoruba lullaby, the one her mother used to hum during the worst nights. Her voice trembled at first, but then it grew. Clear, warm, alive. By the time she finished, the hall was silent. Then came the applause, thunderous, endless. Afterward, one of her teachers stopped her. That was beautiful, she said. What does it mean? Skolola smiled. It means even when the night is long, the sun will find you again. Later that night, she wrote in her journal, I thought I left my world behind, but it followed me here. Not as shadow, but as light. Maybe that's what home really is, the place inside you that refuses to stop hoping. She closed the notebook and looked out the window. The stars above England were different from the ones in Lagos, colder perhaps, but they still burned. She pressed her palm to the glass, whispering into the quiet, For every child still waiting by the fence, I'm coming back for you. The promise felt like a heartbeat, steady and true. And beneath those foreign constellations, the bridge girl who once counted stars through cracks in concrete began dreaming even bigger. Years later, Lagos no longer looked the same. Where there had once been cracked asphalt and the smell of burning tires, there were now streetlights, gardens, and murals that glowed with color. Children ran past in neat uniforms, their laughter blending with the honking of distant traffic and the faint strum of a street guitarist. And near the river's edge, where the old bridge still arched like a scar across the skyline, stood a new building. Painted in soft yellow, trimmed in green, its sign read, The Light Foundation Academy. Free education for every child. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was about to begin. Reporters crowded near the entrance, their microphones angled toward the woman standing on the steps. She was in her late 20s now, elegant yet simple in a white dress. Her smile was warm, her presence steady. Around her neck hung a familiar gold medal. Miss Skolola Agu, one reporter called, how does it feel to open your own school, right where you once lived? Skolola paused, her eyes glimmering. It feels, she said softly, like coming home. Inside, the classroom smelled of chalk and new beginnings. Wooden desks gleamed beneath ceiling fans, and sunlight spilled through wide windows. The walls were painted with words like hope, courage, and learn without fear. Jessica, now managing the foundation's operations, walked beside her, tablet in hand. The media's obsessed with you, she teased. They keep calling you the bridge girl who built a nation. Skolola laughed. That sounds like a movie title. It will be, Jessica said, smirking. I already got 2 calls from filmmakers. Oh no, not again. They both laughed, the sound echoing through the hallway. It had been over a decade since the mango tree, but their friendship hadn't aged a day. They stepped into the first classroom. 20 children sat waiting, pencils poised, eyes wide with anticipation. Skolola's heart caught in her throat. Among them, she saw faces that mirrored her own from years ago. Thin wrists, curious eyes, quiet hunger for more than survival. She took a deep breath and spoke. Once upon a time, she began, there was a girl who wanted to learn, but she didn't have a school, so she taught herself under a bridge. She used chalk that others threw away. She listened through the fence and wrote lessons in the sand. One day someone saw her, and because of that, her life changed. A small boy raised his hand timidly. "Was that girl you, ma'am?" Shalola smiled. "Yes, but this story isn't about me. It's about what happens when someone believes in you, and when you believe in yourself." The children leaned closer, listening. "You see," she continued, "education is a kind of magic. It doesn't erase the past, but it gives you power over the future." She glanced toward Jessica, who was quietly wiping a tear. That afternoon, the schoolyard filled with music. Local dancers performed, reporters filmed, and parents watched proudly. In the front row sat Chief Agu, older now, his hair streaked with silver. He clapped slowly, eyes shining with pride that words couldn't hold. When Shalola walked over to him, he stood and took her hand. "You've built something extraordinary," he said. "You made it possible," she replied. He shook his head. "You made it inevitable." They stood together watching the children chase one another beneath the mango tree that had been planted in the courtyard, a sapling grown from the seed of the one where it had all begun. Later that evening, after the crowds had gone, Shalola wandered back toward the edge of the bridge. The city lights shimmered across the water. She could almost hear echoes of the past, her mother's voice, her own younger laughter, the soft scratching of chalk against concrete. Her mother's spirit still felt close, like wind brushing her shoulder. "I hope you can see this, Mama," she whispered. "Your daughter kept her promise." A gentle voice came from behind her. "She sees it," Jessica said, "and so does everyone else." Skolola turned, smiling. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" Jessica nodded. "All the time. You turned pain into purpose." "We did," Shalola corrected. They stood in silence for a while, watching the reflections ripple. When night settled over the city, Shalola returned to her office. On her desk lay the first notebook she had ever written in, the one with torn pages and faded equations scrawled in pencil. She opened it carefully, tracing the rough handwriting. In the margin of the first page, her younger self had once written a promise. "Someday I'll build a school where no child has to learn through a fence." Skolola closed the notebook, tears slipping down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from fulfillment. Outside, children's laughter drifted through the night air, her students playing tag in the courtyard, free and fearless. Jessica poked her head through the doorway. "They're refusing to go home," she said with a laugh. "Let them stay," Shalola replied, smiling. "They've waited long enough to feel safe here." As the clock struck 9, Shalola stepped outside one last time. The moon hung full and silver above the school, bathing the yellow walls in light. She whispered into the breeze, "To the girl who learned through the fence, thank you for not giving up." The wind seemed to carry the words across the city, through the old alleys, over the bridge, and into the hearts of countless children dreaming beneath the same stars. Somewhere, a barefoot girl looked up at the sky, clutching a broken pencil, and smiled, because she had heard the echo. And with that, the story of the street girl who taught a billionaire's daughter didn't end. It simply began again.